Multiple memorial services will be held starting today at the Zoo Lake in Johannesburg to remember Hugh Masekela, who passed away this week. To quote the beloved jazz musician's American-based eldest son, Sal Masekela, who arrived in South Africa 2 days ago, Hugh Masekela has hung up his horn after a long battle with prostate cancer. It is difficult to comprehend that this moment is real. To me, my father has always been both ageless and immortal. Well, this morning we continue to remember Hugh Masekela, and Phil Molefe is a former executive here at the SABC, but in these days, or in his previous days as a political activist in the Vaal, he travelled to the US and lived with Hugh for a bit. So not only that, Phil also concluded negotiations with Hugh last year to acquire rights to the documentation of his work on the African continent. Phil, great to see you.
Good, it's very, very great.
Welcome
Absolutely.
Back.
Yes.
You were telling me in the guest room, you haven't
Yes.
been in this building for 6 years.
I haven't set foot in this building for the last 6 years.
Wow.
What had been my home for 20 years.
Isn't that amazing? Well, welcome back.
Absolutely.
We're very happy to have you back.
Thank you so much
in the building.
indeed. Thank you.
I can imagine that hearing the passing of Hugh Masekela, a great friend of yours, was that it must have been devastating for you.
Absolutely devastating. I mean, I had known Hugh. I had known his family, his father, because I was born and brought up in Sharpeville. And his father was a health inspector in Sharpeville. And we became very close. As a political activist, I spent a great deal of time with the old man, Uncle Thomas Masekela. So when I finally met Hugh, it was actually like, a full circle. And I was struck by his presence. He was just an ordinary person. Very simple. I mean, Hugh, I had thought I would be meeting someone on a pedestal, but here you were, a very simple, ordinary, but remarkable person.
I think everyone,
icon.
It's amazing how everybody says the same thing about him. You think that the day you meet him, you're going to suddenly, be very intimidated by this superstar, international, nothing.
Absolutely
he was the
nothing.
most normal guy I've ever met.
We met in New York in the house of Zodwa Laird. Since Zodwa had come from Orlando East, and in exile, she got married to Robert Laird. And on that day, she was hosting South Africans after one of the greatest concerts you had staged in New York. And there we were having pap and mochodu and steak, right in New York. It was absolutely fantastic. And Hugh was there, as a very simple, ordinary person, warm, charming and welcoming. So
you spent some time, obviously, with Hugh and Miriam Makeba in the US. Tell us a little bit about those times.
Well, I mean, it had not been for that long, but the time I spent when I was in the US was a very good time to reflect on his music, to reflect on his experiences. And it was abundantly clear that Hugh was a product of the conditions that had produced him, the conditions in South Africa, and in fact, even the harsh conditions he experienced when he arrived in the United States. Because when he got there in the 60s, racial segregation was still very rife. And these experiences are reflected and captured in his music. He was a cultural activist. He expressed his thoughts through music, through his trumpet. And you can see it was a music of protest, a music of struggle, a music for the attainment of human justice and democracy.
Amazing. I mean, to listen to his words is almost documenting the history of South Africa, dating back to many, many years.
Absolutely.
And to see the struggles.
He
also lived in Liberia. He lived in Nigeria. He was in Ghana. He traveled to so many African countries. Now, the great story is that you've actually acquired the rights to document all the work that he's done on the African continent. That's a big task, and yet an amazing one.
Well, as you know, Hugh's career had flourished on 3 frontiers: in Africa, in the United States of America, and in South Africa. And I was quite privileged to have had this conversation with Brayu, that I would like to zoom in on his life and work on the continent of Africa. He had lived in Liberia, as you said, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Botswana, in Lesotho. And this is one part of Brayu's rich history that has not been adequately captured. And last year, we had a very, very good conversation, culminating in a meeting with his business team to agree on capturing the story, the life, and the work of Brayu in Africa. And this work will reflect a Hugh Masekela who was an ambassador of Africa to Africa itself and to the rest of the world. He tells the story of how Africa had emerged from the struggle against colonial rule and oppression, but also a struggle of people with an aspiration to reach to greater heights. And I am fascinated by the friendship between Brayu Masekela and Fela Kuti. And now they are joined together in the world up yonder. And this is the story that will be captured in the documentation I am working on.
Is it a documentary? Is it how is it actually going to?
It is in all formats.
All formats.
It is in all formats. As you know, Brayu's story can not only be confined to a book, to a film, or to a documentary, or to a feature. It is actually something that can be captured in various formats, in a series, in a feature, and so on and so forth. A lot of detail is still under wraps, but yes, we are working on this story that will make Africa to begin to appreciate one of its greatest sons and the work he did on this continent to unite it. Brayu was a Pan-Africanist, and Brayu really wanted to see the continent united. It pained him greatly when he saw the violence that erupted on our shores between our local protesters and people from other African states. It pained him a lot, and I think the work that I will produce will really begin to send a message, particularly to South Africans, that we were so well received in other African countries, and begin to appreciate the reception, the warmth of the people on the rest of the continent.
Well, we can't wait to see this. Thank you for talking to us. Keep us updated. And I hope in the near future we'll get to see some of this work and all the documentations of the incredible work that Hugh Masekela did, both musically, politically, culturally, you name it, in the continent and beyond. Phil Molefe is a veteran South African journalist, currently the Executive Director at Media Knowledge and Chairperson of the National Film and Video Foundation, telling us about his acquisition of the rights to document Hugh Masekela's work in Africa. And I can promise you it's going to be an incredible venture and one we look forward to. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much indeed.